Good afternoon, everybody. It's about 1:58. I see we have already a lot of folks who are here early. Thank you all for coming in on time. We're going to give everybody about 2 more minutes to log in, and then we'll start right at 2 o'clock. So thank you for your patience. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock, so we're going to get things started. Thank you all so much for coming today. We have a great group of attendees I see already, as well as another excellent group of panelists that I'll introduce in a moment. Today, we are holding our second of 4 Red Kettle workshops. Last week, we discussed the topic of social media and online fundraising. This week, we're going to be focusing on advisory organization participation and kickoff events. So I'll be speaking about the program for today in a few moments, but first I would like to introduce Major Robert Schmig, Corps Officer for Scranton, Pennsylvania, who's going to lead us in our opening prayer. Major Schmig?
Thank you. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for your abundant provisions for which you continually provide for us. We thank you for the open doors, for the guidance and direction as we prepare for this upcoming Christmas season. We thank you for the presenters today, Lord, that you would be with them and guide them. Open our hearts and minds to help us be creative in this year, that we can be a light in the darkness in this time of turmoil. May we be your hands and feet, and may this time here in this presentation help us to be more effective in doing these things. We thank you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Major. I now have the pleasure of introducing Lieutenant Colonel Larry Ashcraft, Division Leader of Eastern Pennsylvania and Delaware, who would like to welcome our guests for being here. Colonel Ashcraft.
Thank you, Steve. Hey, everybody, how are you? I hope you're having a good day. I see a good number of attendees, and the list keeps growing as we go on here. So hopefully we'll have a full house before it's all said and done. If you were with us last week, you know how important I feel this is. Let's just be really honest. The Kettle this is forcing us, this pandemic time, forcing us to admit what we already know. And what we've known, some of us who've been around for a while have known for years that as we have moved progressively toward a cashless society, we have to be more innovative than thinking we can put a bucket out in front of a Walmart or a grocery store or something like that and expect the public just to throw their loose change in there. Thankfully, there are those people. And I continually am amazed by the amount of money we raise at Kettle time. As I said, this year, if kettles don't happen in this division, we're looking at $3.5–4 million that we could lose. And so I'm extremely grateful to Stan and Stan Retief and Steve Brown and the leadership of the development department here in Pendel for at least attempting to bring us to a point where we can begin to stimulate some thinking around different avenues of fundraising other than just kettles, or how we might be able to step up our kettle game in pandemic time. And thank you for joining, all of you. I think it's just a great opportunity for dialogue, for questions and answers. We've got some good panelists today who are on. The presenters are good. If we stood them next to each other, you'd have one that was about 6'7" and the other one about 5. How tall are you, Tim? Anyway, it would be like me. I've stood next to Mike. He's a big guy. But we're grateful for the experience they bring and for the real joy they bring as Salvation Army officers. And so I think you're going to benefit from the presentation, but I also think that we're going to benefit greatly from learning from each other. And that's what these are all about. And so thank you all for joining. I'm going to sit back and listen and maybe ask a question or two myself if I get into the Q&A, Steve. Is that okay? Am I allowed?
You're more than welcome, Colonel. We're happy to have you on there.
All right, good.
Great. Thank you, Colonel, for being here today. You've all at this point heard about our Here for Good campaign that we've been holding this summer. And last week we played our Here for Good video that we thought really did a good job of setting the tone for the webinar. So we'd like to play the video for that initiative again today. So if we can go to the next slide, please.
When disaster strikes, the Salvation Army is there. On 9/11, we were there. Hurricane Katrina, we were there. Superstorm Sandy, we were there. Puerto Rico, we were there. COVID-19, we are here. As others move on, we are here. Here for good.
Stan Retief, and Director of Advancement for Eastern Pennsylvania and Delaware. And it's our pleasure to welcome you to our second in a series. At this point, we have 4 planned. And the objective here is not that we would indicate that we have all the answers to all the questions, but rather to initiate some questions and jumpstart the conversation and hopefully jog your own creativity. We feel we're very grateful for the interdivisional participation, and we feel that that kind of interplay can only benefit all of our efforts. You know, critical to the success of the division and of the Salvation Army in regard to its mission is the strength and dedication of the Corps. But an important supplement to that effort is the impact of committed volunteers. And today we're very pleased to have Captain Tim Sheehan, who is going to speak to the kind of interaction that needs to take place in order to engage those volunteers that are so critical to our success. The only thing I would mention is that as recently as Friday, we've learned some of the plans that the National Salvation Army has for the Christmas and the holiday season, and we can begin to consider these questions that we raise through these workshops in regard to those plans and how we can come out of this with a real comprehensive approach to those who have been so generous to us in the past. So Steve, without any further ado, I'd ask you to introduce the panel.
Thank you so much, Stan. So in addition to the fantastic presentation that Captain Sheehan is going to hold for us, we also have a number of panelists who are going to be lending their insight. First and foremost, our friend from out of town, we have Captain Michael Harper, Corps Officer and Area Coordinator from Portland, Maine. Captain Sheehan is also going to be sticking around as a Q&A panelist after his presentation. We're very happy to have him here. We also have Reverend Bonnie Camarda, Director of Partnerships for Eastern Pennsylvania and Delaware. And then Stan Retief, whom you just heard from, our Director of Advancement for Eastern Pennsylvania and Delaware. So throughout this entire presentation and the Q&A, all of you are welcome to submit questions whenever you like. What we will be doing though is rather than answering the questions during the presentation, we're going to wait until the Q&A to answer all questions. So at any point during the presentation, feel free to submit a question, and the way that you do that is if you take your mouse to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button that says Q&A. All you need to do is just click on that Q&A button and it will bring up a box, and then you can submit the question and the panelists will all be able to see it. Now, what you can also do, since the attendees will be able to see it, is if you see a question that you particularly like, or if you have a similar question, you can click on the little thumbs up symbol next to it, which means that you are upvoting it. And the questions that have the most upvotes are the ones that we're going to give the priority to. So we'll certainly try to make sure that all the questions that have the most upvotes are going to be at the very top of the question agenda. You can address questions directly to panelists if you like. Otherwise, I will field the questions and ask a specific panelist to at least get us started with it. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions today, but in the unfortunate case that we do run out of time, we will make sure to take all of the unanswered questions, and we will create written responses to those questions and send them out in a follow-up email later this week to make sure that all of your questions get answered. In addition to all of the questions, you'll also receive a full recording of this workshop as well, just in case you need to reference it at a later date. So with all that being said, I'm very pleased to introduce once again Captain Tim Sheehan, Coordinator of the Delaware State Office, who is going to be taking us through his presentation today. Captain, I hand the microphone over to you, sir.
Thanks, and thanks everybody for jumping on. I don't have all the answers. I have just as many questions as we all do. Come with a little bit of experience, and as been referenced by Colonel and by Stan, the words to the song "A Whole New World" pass through my head every time I think about this coming Christmas and where we're at, where we stand, and how do we move forward. I think the next slide has some responses. You know, we are listening. There was the survey done by our development department, and we're listening. And I think I think that would be all of us across the territory asking these questions or making these statements that are there. And we're learning, as Colonel said, and adapting to these changes together. There are no wrong questions today. If you're looking for a positive thing of COVID, there are no wrong questions, right? They're all right questions because we need to ask all of those questions. So we just kind of go from there. Let me quickly move to what I think is a great piece of scripture, one that we remind ourselves all the time, from Matthew 7, starting at verse 7, and I'll finish off with verse 8. And it simply says, "Keep on asking and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, everyone who seeks finds, and everyone who knocks, the door will be open." That's called persistence. And I think what we need to do as it relates to our advisory organizations. I'm using the term advisory organizations. This way we cover everyone. Advisory board, advisory council, women's auxiliary, professional women's group, service extension, and any other group that you may have that fits in that category. They all love us and they all want to help us. So we need to be asking them. Next slide. So here we are. I'm not going to go through it all. You can read it. We know what they are. They are our hands and feet. As we as officers move in and out, these are the constants that help us guide our work through the community. The Salvation Army plus the advisory organizations equals a tremendous service that we can do in our communities. And as we know, and has been stated, and for those who did have the opportunity to join in on Friday on that national call, we know that this is a holiday season of a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainties. There is one thing certain, and that is people will be coming to the Salvation Army for assistance. And we would be best to be on our game now to see how we can provide that service and those that we need to bring alongside to help us do that. And our advisory organizations in a lot of communities are an untapped resource. There are folks who we see monthly or every other month. They show up for a meeting, they give reports, they hear reports, and then they go back into the community. But have we truly brought them alongside to use them to their full potential? As we know, the holiday season is go, 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 go. We're serving the community, figuring out how to balance core programming while raising much needed funds, not only for the holiday assistance, but for year-round programs. We have Kettle volunteers, Kettle staff, advisory organization members, core members, core officers, employees that run on a schedule where most days we think to ourselves, how do we get all that done? Or how do we get it all that done? And I would imagine that some of you sitting there now are smirking to yourself saying, and there's almost no one that helps us. We've all had that moment of like, I'm doing all this by myself. There's nobody to help me. And I would say to you, the question of the day is, have you asked? Have you asked folks to come alongside and help? Not wait until November 19th or November 15th, but asking now. And this year, more importantly, asking now for folks to come alongside and help. And I think this year, more than any other, we can say we've all experienced COVID and what it's done to us, but we in the Salvation Army have experienced COVID at a whole new level in that of providing assistance to our communities and the work that has taken place across the territory as it relates to providing for the folks in our community. So that equation of the Salvation Army plus our advisory organization members equals service is absolute fact. The successful ministry and service of the Salvation Army in every community is dependent upon the involvement and support that comes from our advisory organizations. And I think all of us can just sit back and look either at appointments we've been in or appointments where we have fellow officers who have talked about their advisory board or council or auxiliary, and you've gone, man, I wish I had that. I think we can all have that. It's just changing our mindset just a little bit. Next slide. Who are they? They're folks who love us. They're folks that are involved in community. And as we know, and I'll go back again, you know, Jesus' entire ministry while on earth was relationship based. Everything he did, he developed relationship. And so that should be our thought as well. It's all about relationships and maintaining those relationships. We should be willing and able to cooperate with and secure the highest service from the advisory organization members when he or she is aware of the fact, as the line says, we have not chosen them, they've chosen us. We've asked them to join us, or another member of the board or council has asked them to join us, and they get to make that selection. So they've chosen to join us. And why is that? Well, they believe in what we do is usually the answer we hear. Many of them aren't there for it to be on the letterhead. That's old school. Today, it's hands and feet, and people wanting to be involved in helping us be in community and serving community. So as you think about it and think of some of your board members, auxiliary members, council members, service extension members, they probably all get asked to serve on other agency boards, nonprofit boards, but they've chosen your board to serve on. And My challenge, I guess, for us today is to have them do more than show up for a meeting, either for breakfast or lunch or a mid-morning snack, but to get their hands and feet dirty with us, get into the muck, get into the mire, get into people's lives, because they will get that same feeling that we do when we get a chance to breathe of today, we changed a life by providing something to us may seem simple, but to that person was insurmountable. So I would challenge you. We must recognize that our advisory organization members are highly motivated individuals who have a sincere interest in serving the community. And they are part of your core family. It's not just your Sunday morning congregation. They are part of your congregation, one that we can witness to, because we all do some sort of devotional in advisory board or auxiliary meetings. It's something there. They're just part of that congregation. And they too look for that, at least from my experience. Each one of them is approachable, personable, in need of what the Army offers as well as what they can offer us. So I would say to you, don't be afraid to ask. I'll go back to Matthew 7, ask. What's the worst someone can tell you? No. Then you find out what is it they want to do? What can they do? And there is something for everyone that is there. Next slide. It's a whole new world. Some of you have that playing in your head right now, right? Whole new challenges that are before us. So the question that I want to spur in your head anyway is, have you asked? Have you asked your advisory board, your council, your professional women's group, your women's auxiliary, your members of service extension, and even the fringe members of those organizations? Have you asked them? Have you told them what you've been about? And I'm sure they've all seen what you've been doing in your individual communities, but have you asked them? And I would simply say, don't be afraid to ask. If you don't ask, you don't know. And in most cases, a lot of us, if a colonel doesn't ask you to do something, you're not going to volunteer, because that means there's something else to do, right? So, but if you make known, that you'd like to be involved in what's happening, then that would be very easy. So the first step that I would challenge you with is to ask. And particularly this year, the need is so needed. And with the uncertainty of Kettles, as we heard on Friday in that national call, no one has said no, but they've asked for more time. Well, I sit in a chair that says we don't have that time. We need to be planning now. What, as I've said to Stan, what is plan A? Plan B is Kettles. We know how to do that. We can do that with our eyes closed just about. In some cases we do. But what is plan A for this year? We have all grown accustomed to online shopping, right? You've had to over the last couple months because you couldn't get anywhere. I don't know about you, but I have a staff member who has learned about Peapod, so her groceries are suddenly delivered by the grocery store. She didn't even go into the place. And I think there's a lot of folks who are at that point now. And of course, as Colonel has stated earlier, a cashless society. We have a coin shortage. It just seems like it's insurmountable. All the odds are against us. But when we tell our story, when we ask, when we empower advisory organization members with the story and the ability to ask, just think about how many other people that are out there on the front line beside you that are telling the story and making the ask. And we know that the Lord will bless us with exactly what we need. The height of this pandemic, the Salvation Army in your community served X amount of people with the basics of life. You in your community may have been the difference that day in a family eating or not eating, paying a utility bill or eating. And you can just run through all those through your head. This is one thing that I learned a long time ago. Your money follows your heart. And I guarantee you, if we could go around and ask what your favorite thing is to do, and you stop and thought for a second, your money follows it there, right? So with our advisory organization members as part of the Salvation Army family, they're wanting to put their treasures where they're going to be most effective in use. And because we report to them and see, I am sure Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We're reminded in Matthew 6:21. So I would say, let's challenge our board and council and the other groups to ring the bell this year, putting their hearts and treasure into the community through their commitment in the Salvation Army. It is not difficult. We have to trust that these folks will be out there telling the good news of what they're doing in the community, what they're a part of. And none of this is new. None of this is rocket science. This is all relationships. This is all about asking. And when you ask them, they'll ask somebody else and somebody else. And I think the commercial went and so on and so on and so on. And so you build an army out of a simple ask. So in this great time of uncertainty, make sure to ask for help wherever you can. Next slide, please. So the first thing we need to do is enable them. We need to give them the tools. We need to take the initiative to ask them for help rather than to wait for them to come to us. Secondly, let's challenge them. Some of your advisory organization folks may already be asking you, what about kettles? What's happening with kettles this year? And I'm sure many of us have that look on our face like, we don't know. We're not sure. But I think if we ask them that and tell them that we're not sure, we're probably not looking at the same 129-year tradition of the kettle. This year, it may look a whole lot different, but to, as was stated earlier, be creative in our holiday fundraising initiatives. Make sure that they are up to date on what is happening at your location. That is probably one of the most important things that we can do. It may mean, developing an email chain and once a week sending something out. You'll notice on that slide, I put the word statistics, and I would say to you, just provide them a report and a great story. Give them that 13-second elevator speech, if you will, something they can use when they're talking to people about the impact that your location is having on the community and the people who come through the door that are looking for assistance. And then inspire them. We all know that we raise to another level when we get affirmation of a job well done, or someone comes along and says, thank you for that. And we need to do the same thing. Sometimes we just take it for granted because they show up every month. They give their input into a board meeting and then back out the door they go. But we need to, on a regular basis, show them our appreciation and our thanks for their assistance in helping us drive Salvation Army program this holiday season and throughout the year. Next slide. So let's get them involved in action. Get loud, and I can't take credit for that. That was Stephen's word, but it's excellent. Get loud. We are often said and told to us, oh, we didn't know you did all of that as the Salvation Army. It's time for us to stand up on the open air soapbox, for those you hold enough to remember that, to get loud, tell our story, ask the advisory organization members to involve colleagues, business contacts, local politicians, just anyone in their sphere of influence to come alongside. There are a gazillion ways to do that these days. As we learned last week with social media, there's a gazillion ways. And I would say to you, if you're thinking, how do I use the Honor Society this year? Well, those are social media experts. And I would say to you, that's how you use the Honor Society. If we don't have traditional kettles on the street, they suddenly become your social media folks, because they are adapt to that. When I have a question, I have a 9-year-old grandson and a 16-year-old grandson. That's where I go to get answers. So with electronics and social media stuff, so I would encourage you to use all the tools. So get loud, get online, and be creative. And those that are sitting around the table as part of your advisory organizations have a lot of creative ideas, and all the ideas need to come onto the table now. I know it's August 17th and we're talking about kettles. I think a few of us started thinking about kettles back in May when we're looking at this COVID thing and listening to science and where we could be potentially at kettle time. So use all the creative ideas that you can as it relates to involving the members of your organizations. Next slide. So I ran into this a few years ago when I worked in the Great Swanneke Division as the development director. There was a corps who put together the Red Kettle Club. The goal was to have every member of the board involved and those peers of theirs in business involved in holiday giving. And you could call it a high end. I don't know if we'd call it a high end today, but back in those days, you may call it a high end. But it was designed to challenge the members of the board to participate in giving, as well as I said, their peers and friends, family. It was led by 2 advisory board members who had entrepreneurial spirits and weren't afraid to go out there and ask. When they were asked if they would do this by the officer, they both said yes, and they were off to the races. The personal commitment of these 2 board members led other advisory board members to commit to the project. In 1994, a few years ago, dark ages, ancient for some of you, 4 board members gave Christmas gifts of $1,000 or more. In 1995, there were 12 board members that gave $1,000 or more. In 2014, all board members were giving $1,000 or more. The networking process took over the advisory board giving, and which in turn provided leads to other people to write and to call on. The board members made the calls themselves. It wasn't on the officer or the staff, but it was a total advisory board driven program. And they were soliciting new club members. You know, when someone gave a gift, they were given a nice certificate that was printed in the office, making them an honorary captain. And in order to keep that status, you know, they had to make that same pledge every year. Success, well, in 1994, the first year they did it, they raised $39,000 with little effort. In 2014, that year they raised almost $555,000 in that season, in that Christmas season. Over that 20-year period, that program raised $6.5 million, all out of 2 guys saying yes and then going out and recruiting others. So I go back to ask. It doesn't hurt. It's just one example of what could happen when we get our board, our councils, our auxiliary members or service extension members involved and participate in not only fundraising, but friend raising, because one of the other outcomes of that was new board members that were identified who suddenly wanted to be part of something that was impacting community. Next slide. I would hope this is not true, that we all have an advisory organization of some sort. It may be a little quiet and it needs to be turned up. This may be the year that we use this pandemic to turn it up, to get them excited about what they can do for their community through the Salvation Army. And so I would challenge you, hopefully if you've got an advisory board, council, or one of the other groups that is just there, to get them energized and to bring them alongside to be a part of it. If not, you've got at least a couple of volunteers who show up all the time, and you can provide the information to get them and find out, pick their heads, see who they know. In a lot of cases, you are 1 or 2 handshakes away from getting to a person who could come alongside and provide resources, people, or financially that would impact what you're able to do in your community. I sit here today in Wilmington, and probably the 2nd most protective city, because we have the Democratic National Convention going on and Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris that are in town. I know that with 1 phone call, I can get to Mr. Biden. I'm not going to do it now because, you know, I just want to stay out of the fray, but somebody in your advisory organization is also at that level where they know where they're at. everyone has an expertise. If no one is an official fundraiser, they may have skills in all the things that are listed there, and getting you to the person who can. So advise your organizations, be creative, bring them in as part of the process, not just a monthly meeting group. I think once you get them involved in this type of setting, they'll want to be involved in other things, which will help lighten the load that we all carry each day, because there will be folks who want to be invested in. Next slide. This is where you really get to be creative and planning your Kettle Kickoff. We're going to make the assumption it's all going to happen virtually. And it may be you want to join with 3 or 4 core in your region to do a Kettle Kickoff. That may get you the bigger bang with news media, if you will, when they show in their region. Everyone's coming together. Last year in Delaware, we did something crazy. All came together, went to the state capitol, stood on the steps, and had our Kettle Kickoff. What did that get us? That got us coverage up and down the state, because in Dover, every news outlet has a bureau, because they want to know what's going on at the state capitol. And we managed to get a couple of state representatives come out of the building and be a part of and tell their own story of how the Salvation Army's impacted their life. So be creative. What you see there is Philadelphia's annual dinner this year going virtual, and how they're going to handle that. So as it relates to a kickoff event, be creative. The world is yours, as they say, right? To do what you can to get the word out that, yep, it's Christmas time, it's the Salvation Army. While we may, and I want to make sure we hear that, while we may not have the kettle on the street, we still have the need to raise money. So there's other ways to ring the bell virtually, if you will. Next slide. Here's all the options that you can do that. You can be as elaborate as you want. You can be as small as you want. Just tell the story and have folks aware that, hey, holiday season's here. We're kicking it off. We depend on you now and through the year. As Colonel said, it's in the division, it's $4 million. That's a lot of people getting a lot of help with every dollar, every penny that comes through. So be creative. And this is a point where you may not normally get to someone who carries significant community weight in your community, but virtually you may be able to get to them and have them be a part of your campaign. Join in on something that is already happening in the community. Next slide. Again, some more of here's what you can do as it relates to the basics for kickoff planning, if you will. Involve all you can and bring the story of what's happening in your community, and make sure this is the younger generation language. Make sure you tag every news media outlet out there so that they get the idea and they get the story that, yep, Salvation Army's here, and we're after our annual campaign at Christmas time so that we can provide the services. Next slide. Yeah, I know, August, and we're talking about kettles, and it's what we need to be doing this year. And you can see the timeline there that suggested. I think what we learned on the national call on Friday is, even at a national level, we're looking to start a little earlier. And I'm going to look at Stan and say, did I hear that? And I'm going to say, Stan, just give me a thumbs up. Even national headquarters is realizing that this year is so unique that we need to be starting a little earlier in our approach to talking about Christmas and what we need to do to make sure that we stay at the levels that we've been accustomed to over the years. We know that kettles have been decreasing over the years. So this is a chance for us to get out there in the virtual world and the online world as well to be part of it. So there's a timeline as we see it now, but as Paul Harvey would say, stand by for news, because it's in flux and it could change to where it's going to happen a little quicker. Next slide. And again, just some more kickoff events and who you can challenge, sponsors, and participation. Again, your advisory organization is an amazing group of people who have some incredible connections that I don't know that we fully bring alongside and partner with to give what we can do as the Salvation Army. So educate, empower, and send out. I feel like I'm at the accepted candidates farewell. And as we send them out, I'm going to steal a line I heard Colonel say last night. We are all messengers of reconciliation. And this year, more than ever, I think we can be messengers of reconciliation as we try and do our best to serve our community by bringing alongside all of the folks that we have in our sphere of influence. Next slide. And I would simply say to you, go for it. The sooner the better. The word that you can get out potentially of Kettle's Christmas fundraising is going to happen. It may look a little different, but it's going to happen, and begin to set that word out now. And then the resources that can be available through our divisional headquarters will be a tremendous asset for all of us to use. So I hope I spurred a little bit of thought, and maybe you've made some notes. You may think I'm half crazy. That's okay, I am. And we just know, I believe in my heart that if we are faithful to what the Lord's asking us to do, He'll be faithful in seeing that we have the resources to do that. But we have to do our part and involve all of our core family, from those who come to church on Sundays and in programs during the week to our advisory organization members. And I think when we all come together and tell our story, we are a powerful community advocate that people want to get behind and support. So there we are. Stephen.
Thank you so much, Captain. That was fantastic. We have had some great questions already rolling in that we're absolutely going to have right at the top of the agenda now. Please do, though, continue to submit questions as we hear from the panel, because they may spur some more ideas. We did just have a quick question that came out asking, will the PowerPoints be sent in a recording? And absolutely, we're recording live right now. We will be sending out this recording later on this week. So I'm going to make sure that I give all of the questions that have already been submitted a chance to be answered. And Captain Harper, I'm gonna start with you, please, sir. And a couple of the questions have had to do with asking about when it comes to advisory board members, how do we empower them and make them feel comfortable with asking for donations, whether it's from businesses or friends or family members. Some people just hate asking people for money. So what are some ways that core officers and development staff can help the advisory board members with that?
Well, I have, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have kind of a two-part answer. One would be to back up the bus way back to the beginning, and it starts with the way, if you have the opportunity to recruit advisory board members, and all of us do, setting that culture right from the very beginning. The idea behind building an advisory board isn't just to throw bodies at it. You want to make sure that you're bringing people in from various segments of the business world around you, people that have connections. We know the basics. You want people associated with banks and retail and Chamber of Commerce, the other service groups and so forth. So all sorts of people, retired business people who can serve in like a consultancy way. So that helps. So they're people that tend to be already comfortable and understand from the very beginning why they're coming alongside in the first place, which is to help resource the Salvation Army in its mission. Secondly, we don't always have that opportunity. We come into an appointment and the board's there. And maybe it's a board that has not traditionally been really active. And but again, over time, and it takes a little while, you can kind of begin to change that culture by introducing entrepreneurial ideas and an entrepreneurial flavor into your meetings. Maybe take a few minutes at each meeting instead of just going over what what you've done since the last meeting, but to intentionally set or reset that culture that the advisory board is not only there to advise, but they're there to help gather resources so that you can accomplish your mission.
Excellent. Thank you, Captain. Stan, I want to turn the next question over to you, please. Several folks have upvoted the question about the national call on Friday that Captain Sheehan referenced a couple times. For those who were not able to be on the call on Friday, could you provide a short summary of some of the main topics of conversation?
Sure, happy to, Steve. And just be aware that that is going to be available on a link, and that should be coming out to you likely today. The gist of the call was exactly what Captain Sheehan referenced in his points, and that is, it really is going to be an uncertain year. We need to have Plan B or Plan A, depending on how you reference it, just in case the kettles are not available. The good news is that pretty much no one has said no to date. THQ and the national headquarters have been encouraged by the fact that folks continue to talk about it and how it would be done and how we would make certain that it was as safe as possible. But the bottom line is, as I think was mentioned last week, first and foremost, kettles have been diminishing over the course of the last several years. One reason is that only about 67% of all available kettles were being utilized. So that we need to take advantage of it if it is there. But if it's not there, what the Richards Group is suggesting is we need to impart upon people the fact that there will be an increased need this year. There could almost not be, given the amount of folks who have lost their jobs, the people who are receiving unemployment and have been impacted by the pandemic. There'll also be an increased demand on the Salvation Army because of those larger numbers, and our task will be even greater and our impact will be even greater. What the Richards Group is recommending is that we offer a comprehensive message as to how we're going to approach the kettle season in 2020 or 2020. First of all, there will be significant media buys, there will be social media campaigns, and all will focus on the theme, Rescue Christmas. There's a very compelling commercial that's been produced utilizing the music of Christian music star Lauren Daigle. There's collateral that will emphasize that and reinforce it. The one thing that's important to know is that all of these resources, while they'll be available in the Red Kettle toolkit, they are embargoed until mid-September when the campaign is launched. So there's a lot of good information. You'll be receiving the link. Keep in mind that it is embargoed until that date certain is announced. But it gives us a real boost in terms of our own efforts. If we can supplement that which is taking place nationally, territorially, and divisionally, we can address one of the issues that was raised to us in our initial survey, and that was that sometimes the messaging seems to be disjointed. I think we're going to look to a situation in this year where we'll have a very comprehensive, compelling, and coordinated message.
Excellent. Thank you, Stan. The next question I have goes to Reverend Bonnie. Reverend Bonnie, you served on an advisory board, I know, so I'm glad to get your perspective on this. When you think about all the different cores and service extensions throughout all of our areas, you have large and small, you have urban and rural. What are some of the challenges and what are some of the solutions for starting or engaging an advisory board, depending on the area of the region or the country that you're in?
I needed to unmute myself. I think what is a challenge, the challenge will be that you need to go into the community, into your business, if you're going to start a new advisory board or an advisory council and see who is there. You need to start really working within the community to see who is in your community and start thinking where are the people or the players that you can bring to be part of your board. Looking at the different expertise that is in that town and that is needed at the Salvation Army. Then to start is just really involving you in your community, find out who is in your community, small or large, and then see who has really the same vision that you have and start talking to them. Remember years back, many, many years back, the Salvation Army had an advisory for women in Philadelphia. It wasn't an advisory council, it was the women's ministry, and they looked into one of the ministers of Philadelphia, who is the head of Blue Cross and Blue Shield, to be the chair. And they began doing some things together. Soon they got the right person, since they start coming in together, and it really was formed into a fundraising mechanism for the women. It was a women auxiliary. Then that would be what I will suggest to maintain. I think is continue. I want to give a shout out to Mayor Tani from the Philadelphia, because she keep engaging her board and giving them vision and telling them what the Salvation Army is doing during COVID-19, and that inspires people to want to come alongside you. And the other thing is, yes, challenge people to come and help you, to be with you, to be really part of the Salvation Army. And I say to everybody, is helping the least of this. Who are the least of this? All those who we serve. Then just keep talking to people and keep challenging people to join us. We have the greatest mission that any organization can have, and we do it. We do the most good anytime we really get ourselves working on it.
Excellent. Thank you, Reverend Bonnie. Stan, I'm going to turn another question over to you, please. There was a question about with advisory organization members, whether there's whether cores or service extensions should set a specific amount of money that advisory organization members should be giving on an annual basis. I wanted to start with you and then see if Captain Sheen or Captain Harper had anything to add to that question.
Great, Steve. And that's an excellent question on a number of levels. With an organization as diverse as ours, it's important that we resonate with the folks that we're talking to. And at times, what the answer for the Philadelphia Advisory Board might be very different from something that's gone on in another part of the division. There are instances where a minimum has been set, whether it be 5,000 or 2,000, depending upon what the landscape is in that particular area and what the economic circumstances are. The issue there is that you don't want to set that too high, certainly, but you don't want to set it too low either. You want to make certain that you're allowing folks to invest in the organization at the level at which not only are they comfortable with, but maybe it stretches them a little bit. And so one of the techniques that I've seen used with great success is that we use the biblical and the kind of the offertory that we look at in many verses in Scripture. I mean, obviously they talk about tithing, but they also talk about in accordance with your means. And if we can get folks giving in accordance with their means, we're likely going to be hitting that at just the right point. So is it good to have goals? It's always good to have goals. But the key there is to make sure that you're not setting it too high so that you scare folks away, but you're not setting it too low so that you're leaving money on the table.
And Captain Harper, did you have something to add, sir?
Yeah, I would be much more comfortable because advisory board members, some of the disparity between their incomes and financial ability can be kind of great. But I wonder if it would be better to let them know that there's an expectation that annually, we would like them to not so much contribute, but although they can, but go after and bring in a certain amount of resources. So in other words, every board member should be encouraged to bring in $5,000 in donations themselves through their, where they're tapping their own networks.
If I could, Stephen, real quick,
Yes, sir.
to tag on to Stan's comment, I won't take credit for this. The board chair here in Delaware has put together a document, and what she's asking each board member to commit to is the Salvation Army being one of their top 3 charitable donations. And she lists church first, which could be a challenge for some board members, but it's going right where Stan was. So I think what's important is that it would be board led, and the chair would be the influencer. We'd be right there to help, but it needs to be something that is board led, and they would their buy-in. That goes back to that whole peer pressure thing, right? And as Captain Mike said, the level is great on most of our boards. So if they're identifying us as one of their top 3, it'll be based on what their means are.
Another thing I was going to add to that if you are joining a board, it's pretty clear that the board has 3 thrones. It's one, give your own resources, get or get out. That's what we'll tell you any board member, really. Then, I mean, that is these 3 threes to have in any board mandate. And I'm not saying that, usually board needs 100% participation, because when they go out and raise the money, we need to tell people that we have 100% participation in our board giving. Then I think if that expectation is set in early, I think you will find that people will give.
Excellent. Thank you all. So I'm looking at the clock. I think we have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions. I did want to ask this next question to both of our captains on the line. For both of you, throughout your years of experience and the different areas where you've served, what are some of the specific activities that you yourself or have seen other corps or service extensions do for their Kettle Kickoff events? Have there been any that have stuck in your mind as being particularly innovative or successful?
If I may, we're most recently from New Hampshire, Manchester, New Hampshire, and we did similarly to what Captain Sheehan mentioned and described. We would have a statewide kickoff, and all of the New Hampshire Corps would meet at the State House and literally have it on the steps along with the governor and some members of the House that would be there. And there'd be a brass quartet or quintet, and it would just be a real rousing time, and it would help officially kick it off for the entire state. Additionally to that, when we were in Cambridge, Massachusetts, our corps we did our own Kettle Kickoff. Every corps was expected at that time to have their own, and we would have a mixture of advisory board members, local politicians, selectmen come, and we do the same thing, but on a little bit of a smaller scale, try to get some media there, either a radio station van or the local TV station, and that can be quite effective as well. It's fairly easy to do, especially if you send a press release to the media outlet ahead of time.
And Stephen, I would chime in with some of the same things. It could really get creative if one of the other things that I can recall being done in a major market was a weather person challenge, where they grabbed the weather people from all 3 or 2 networks that were there, had them adopt a kettle, which just put your kettle on the news every time that weather person was on, because they were talking about what the kettle in their community did. But they would then be also involved in the kickoff forecasting what kettles would be looking like or what they could raise. So it is as creative as you can be, but as Captain Mike said, it's important that we reach out and involve whatever news media outlet you have in your community to be a part of that through a press release, because that will generate interest in the Salvation Army is a great story. So they'll come.
Excellent. Thank you both captains for your responses. So I do hate to shut down the questions, but unfortunately we're getting on 3 o'clock. I want to make sure that I'm respectful of everyone's time. Again, if we did not get to your questions, we certainly will be creating a written response to the questions and sending them out later this week. So please know that we take all of your questions very seriously and appreciate you asking them. So for next Monday, a week from today, we will be holding our 3rd Red Kettle workshop. The theme of that workshop is going to be corporate and small business participation. So whether we're talking about large corporations or just small businesses in your area, this will be a workshop that will talk about the best ways to get them involved, particularly beyond just traditional in-person kettling, so that you have different options to give some of your business partners in case they may not be participating this year. The lead presenter is going to be Major Darren Mudge from Reading Corps, and we'll also have a special guest panelist, Patricia James from Portland, Maine. So Captain Harper, if you would please, sir, close us in prayer.
Yes. Our Father in heaven, we love you and we thank you for the opportunities you give us to serve you. Father, I thank you for all of the like-minded individuals here today, trying to figure out how we can get our boards more involved. Different activities as we gear up for potentially having kettles or not. It's a confusing time, but it's also, Lord, kind of like the wild, wild west. It's a very fluid environment, and it was during times like this that the Army has really risen to the occasion in the past. And so, Father, we seek your guidance, we seek your power, your wisdom, and help us now for this time and in this day to be a beacon, or actually a big magnifier that just allows people to see you through us. And we ask you to bless us, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Captain. Again, special thanks to Captain Harper and Captain Sheehan and all of you for joining us today. We truly appreciate you being here. And we hope to see you all next week, and keep an eye out for a follow-up email from us in the next couple of days. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody.
Bye.